Welcome back to another episode of Sal and Pals Go to the Movies. Touly is busy, so I will be reviewing Parallel Mothers by myself. So just a fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. The story of two mothers who give birth the same day. Originally, we were going to review Morbius, but due to the pandemic, it was delayed till April 1st. So since we have reviewed All About My Mother from the same director, Pedro Almodovar, and we promised to review more of his films, so here we go. My first pro. The film keeps the feel of the last film we reviewed, All About My Mother, in more than one way. For example, they both share the color red that appears throughout the film, but in a nice subtle way. Both films share the theme of single mothers that are strong and successful and independent. We also find characters in both films whose roles revolve around theater acting. And of course, we have the theme of motherhood that comes into play in both films. We also have the always dependable best friend in both films. In this one, it's Rosie De Palma who plays Elena. Also, there is the obvious in both films. We have Penelope Cruz, but this film has her in the leading role, while the latter has her as a supporting role. I found all these to be Easter eggs, but not really hidden, more like letting fans know that he still has the touch. Next pro is how the film seems to be about motherhood, but the director interweaves the topic of the Spanish Civil War, where 114,000 people were killed and buried in unmarked graves, and how their family members even now are still looking to find them and exhume their bodies to give them a proper burial. This is done by including the real-life organization for recovery of history memory that helps the main character Janice, played by Penelope, find her great-grandfather along with her village lost loved ones. It was done so subtle but with a great impact that it almost at the last second outshined the motherhood concept until you finally realize it was the mothers that were left alive to keep fighting, and Janice never lost the hope to fulfill her grandmother's wish to exhume the bodies, and also since it matches up with her loss of her daughter. The last scene of the open grave with the skeletons, which then changed to human bodies to take their place, is a symbolic way of giving the unknown skeletons an identity, and the more important thing, their dignity that was once taken from them. The scene alone is so strong that it will leave you wondering, how could this ever happen in a world such as ours? And people remain quiet. Next is how the film has two mothers, Janice and Anna, played by Penelope Cruz and Melena Smith respectively, who play two opposite roles. Janice is pregnant but somewhat planned, while Anna says that hers was a mistake. We have Janice, an adult, a successful photographer with a loving family, while Anna is still a teenager with a divorced father and mother, whose mother chooses her acting career over her own daughter. We also have Janice, who is politically moved and is holding the government responsible for wanting to forget about the Spanish Civil War and all the deaths that occurred, while Anna says that her father told her what happened in the past should stay buried. Here we see they are both mothers, but seems to have different points of view of life, but still they are linked by the bond of motherhood. And yes, the baby girls are switched at birth, and one dies while Janice finds out the truth that she isn't the biological mother of the daughter that's with her. Anna moves in and tells Janet her baby died, to which Janice holds off, telling her the truth about the babies being switched at birth. Now living together, they become closer intimately, and by the end they drift apart by fighting over Janice's involvement with Arturo, to the end when they reconnect and how they will be involved in the child's life and maybe even share custody of the child. Now moving on to my cons. So when Arturo, the father of Janice's baby, says he wants a paternity test, Janet gets upset at the idea of him even thinking the baby isn't his because of the skin tone the baby has. But later, Janice does take a test in which she finds out that she is not the biological mother of the baby. She makes two phone calls. She calls a lawyer and then Arturo. And given that both calls go unanswered, but here is where I get confused. Why not follow up with the lawyer and sue the hospital for switching the babies? 2. Why not tell Arturo about it, since he might even be devastated to find out his real daughter was switched at birth? But instead, Janet tells him she called him by mistake. Okay, I'm all about strong mother roles, but who wouldn't seek the support of the baby's father to stand with her against the hospital or to try to find the daughter? Yes, he was a dick to plant the suspicion in her mind at first, but it still remains. Why would she try to hide this? And how was it that she was planning to find the baby? It wasn't like she knew that Anna might have the other baby at that point. So for me, this really threw me for a loop. I couldn't understand what Janice was going for. Next con. Okay, Janice gave up on Arturo, then falls for Anna. I mean, it wasn't like, oops, I was drunk. They seem to establish a relationship, and since the director had Anna's character go from being feminine at the beginning of the movie, for her later to have cut her hair and dyed it blonde and dressing like a tomboy. It wasn't like he was sidestepping this development. The film leads you this way, and you are like, okay, they are together. Then they fight about Janice and Arturo meeting up, and eventually the baby not being Janice, but instead being Anna's biological baby. And so they split up until we see them at the end of the movie getting out of the car together. The baby's there and they show up to the mass grave. We see all three there together: Janice, Arturo, and Anna, also the baby and the best friend. So one of three things. So what happened here? One, Janice and Arturo are back together while Anna lets Janice see the baby. Or two, Janice and Anna are together sharing custody of the baby and Arturo is doing his job. Or three, Janice is no longer with Arturo or Anna, showing that she is independent, but Anna is allowing her to see the baby and Arturo is just doing his job. Whichever it is, I wanted to see how Janice and Anna ended up solving their lovers quarrel and then being okay to show up together at the unmarked mass grave, since it was the main plot at one point, right? Two mothers, one baby, and Arturo the third wheel. Overall, this movie was enjoyable, having two sides, motherhood and the Spanish Civil War theme involved, which was a hard punch to the stomach, I must admit, once we saw the grave. I would even go as far as saying that this showed the real meaning of the saying from the cradle to the grave. Once again, director Pedro Almodovar made a film that seemed to be simplistic at the beginning, but at the end carries so much weight, so much that the Spanish government passed a bill that now returns the funding to the organization that the character Arturo was part of in the film. I know it might not have been due to the film, but at least they are moving in the right direction, and hopefully all these families that have been looking for closure can finally one day find peace. I would highly recommend this film. It has some things I would have liked to be cleared up better, but overall it's a great movie. So my grade for this film is going to be a 7 out of 10. So that does it for this review of Parallel Mothers. Please join us next time for another new release review, but since movies are being delayed left and right, we do not know what the next film might be, so stay tuned to our social media to find out which film we're going to review next. Please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find our social media links below, and like always, keep watching movies.